Welcome to Between Two Rounds. I'm Tarek Waked, founding partner at Type 1 Ventures. I'm here with David Mandell from Massive. How you doing, David?
I am doing great. Always enjoy hanging out with you.
Yeah, it's always a good time.
Yeah, pleasure.
Thank you for making it out to LA.
My pleasure. Luckily, I had a good excuse this time. It was my daughter's 21st birthday yesterday, so I flew out to take her to dinner and do a little celebrating and see some good business partners and friends while we're
celebrating with a 21-year-old. Are you a little hungover because it's a little early today?
I think she may be a little hungry.
That's fun. I remember those. I don't remember my 21st birthday actually.
I don't either, but yeah, it's fun to live it through your daughter's eyes, though. So.
Unless you grew up in Europe, then you built up a tolerance by the time you're 21.
It is funny watching the waiter say, "Hey, is this your first drink?" And
it's never.
It's always hysterical.
When was your first drink?
When was my first drink?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I don't know. I'm old, so back.
You don't look that old.
Back when they invented alcohol.
Pre-prohibition or post-prohibition?
Definitely post-prohibition. Yeah. But yeah, probably like middle school or something like that.
Yeah. I remember my first drink. I must have been like 14 years old, and my mother had some sort of alcohol underneath the sink, and I grabbed it.
Just some random sort of alcohol.
It was like some like.
You sure it was actually drinking alcohol? It wasn't like.
It might have been the rubbing alcohol. No, I'm kidding. It was some sort of ethnic alcohol.
Right.
That she got from her parents. I don't remember what it was. I can't ever find it in stores. And I brought some friends over, and we had a pool. And I ended up diving into the pool, but it was the shallow end. And I went face first into the shallow end of the pool. And I had this like...
Oh, man. So that explains a lot.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Yeah. Anyway, so tell us...
Were you okay?
I was great.
All right.
I'm always okay. I'm a hard-headed individual.
Did your mother beat the shit out of you, or?
No, I replaced it. I diluted it with water, and she never found out.
You think she never found out?
Exactly.
Right. Parents are smarter than you think sometimes.
Yeah, I would say so. As I'm getting closer to parent age, I think I understand them a little bit more.
Good.
Anyway, tell us a little bit about Massive, about yourself. What do you do?
Sure. So I'll start with some quick background. So I'm a founder, entrepreneur by background. I've been in the startup game since before 2000. Started and sold 3 different companies. Been a mentor forever. I'm a CEO coach. I've been doing that for about 8 years, and which is really interesting, just talking to early, mid-stage CEOs and understanding what they're struggling with and helping them get through it, and do a talk for a lot of startup accelerators called Being a Badass CEO, which is always fun. It's always interesting watching CEOs who are, show up as, I got this, I'm the shit and everything's good. And
is there an archetype?
I don't know if it's an archetype, but there's definitely psychological and emotional drivers. And they tend, they can be subtle and different, but there's a lot of similarity around the people I work with. And also self-selecting, right? There's a lot of CEOs I won't work with.
Really? Okay. And I bet that really helps when it comes to investing, having seen that pattern recognition of what a good CEO looks like. And when you're talking to an early stage company, identifying those drivers is probably very key and gives you additional alpha that other investment managers probably do not have.
Yeah, and I think the key phrase there is pattern recognition, right? And that's, when I talk to a lot of my CEOs and when I bring to Massive as well, it's like this is all about pattern recognition. It's about recognizing things that are happening that either you created or others created and not reacting the same ways you did in the past and understanding the right way to react and understanding how to react to those patterns and using them to guide the way you think through things in the future. And I think it's super interesting from a Massive perspective because, like, I think Ari, who you know very well, is my co-founder. He and I we've known each other for what, like 4 or 5 years? Yeah. We both started kind of on the same path. That's about right. Yeah, that's about right. And the great thing about working with Ari is we're very complementary. We have very different skill sets, but we're very complementary. We bring different pattern recognition to the game, right? So he used to be a partner at the Techstars venture firm. He's invested in hundreds and hundreds of early stage startups. He understands venture very well. He was a real product technology person. I came up more on the leadership management, CEO, business side. And so we have really interesting pattern recognition from both sides of that world. And when you put them together, it's a lot of fun and it helps.
How do you guys bring both of those, perspectives together into a concise, massive perspective?
It's interesting. We have very interesting conversations about potential investment opportunities, and we've each talked the other off the ledge.
Do you guys ever clash? And how do you do to resolve differing opinions? If you want to do a deal and he doesn't believe in the deal, do you guys let the other person run? Or
No, we don't do a deal unless we're both hell yeah.
Okay.
Right, and which is one of the things that helps us as a firm. We definitely have, I wouldn't call them arguments, we have discussions. We've never really clashed. I mean, we're lucky in that, we're both older. We've been in this space for a very long time. We know the value of a good co-founder. We've both had bad co-founders. In the past, we've lived through multiple co-founder relationships.
You don't have any more hair to lose, so.
No, seriously. Honestly, we're just too fucking old to deal with assholes. So, we really, really love working together, and we're very good friends. Both our wives are good friends. We vacation together or whatever, right? Of course. And the relationship
that's most important.
Yeah, and the relationship is really the key, right? That's what motivates you to get up every day and go to work. It's when you like the people you work with. It's not usually
have a no asshole policy. We share the same sentiment.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. And Maggie, who works with us as well,
she's great.
She's amazing, and she brings a whole different dynamic to the team. So it's really just the three of us, but we have a lot of fun doing what we do.
Do you have plans to scale?
So scale, you can look at scale in a lot of different ways. Our goal is not to build a huge firm. And we had a lot of conversations when we started Massive around what we wanted. And our goal was not to build a large firm that we would have to manage and grow, and not to let the administrative side take over the value-added venture side.
Sure.
So we definitely have plans to grow and scale, but more from assets under management, AUM, portfolio companies, maybe one or two new partners and administrative people. But we are not out here to build a big firm.
I ask because when it comes to decision making, I've seen data that shows the best investments are not driven by consensus, or at least on the early stage side. Mm-hmm. Some of our best investments at Type 1 have been investments where the whole team was not on board, and somebody had to pound the table, and we went with the investment, and it played out well. Because if something is clearly seen by everyone, what are we missing here? So how do you get around that? Maybe as you are just you two, and you guys have a really good connection and rapport, you can get away with that. But do you think if you were to bring other partners, you would change the structure where it's not both of you have to be hell yeah?
We would, but again, our goal is not to bring in a lot of people. If we just, we have a very good dynamic, and we don't, like I said, we don't always agree on everything, but every now and then he can talk me into something and I can talk him into something, and that's really valuable. And we both have a lot of trust for each other.
I see.
So at some point you let that trust step in and say, all right, I'm going to go with this because I believe what he's saying, and I'm going to support it even though I may be a little concerned or not completely sold.
Sure.
But honestly, when it's just two, three of us, really, it's not like there's a big committee we have to convince.
Yeah.
And we all bring three very different perspectives to the table. So if there's a technology he's super excited about, and I don't like the leadership team, and I see some real red flags in the leadership team, that's a good reason to not do that investment, right? And vice versa. If there's an amazing CEO that I'm like, we got to back this person, and he looks at where they're going from a product side, a technology side, or where the industry's moving, and he brings up appropriate red flags. We have to be open to those conversations, but it's not committee.
Were you all friends before you started Massive?
Ari and I have known each other for a very long time. Okay. We met originally back in, I think, 2007. He was starting a company going through the very first Techstars class. I was a mentor for Techstars, and I mentored him there. And
I was in high school.
We don't want to talk about that. And at the same time, which indicates how old we are again, we met through a parenting class.
Oh, wow.
Because we were both struggling with how do we raise and be good parents to our kids, and we were looking for some help. And so we met in a parenting class at the same time and just became very good friends.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and both did very different things for a long time, but always stayed friends. And then he left Techstars, I think, in 2018, and I sold my last business in 2017. And we started talking about working together full time, and those turned into Massive. We launched Massive in January of 2020.
Yeah, I'm excited to be co-investors with you guys.
As we are with you guys. You guys are awesome.
We look forward to the massive successes that we're both going to share.
Thank you. I think we should both find some time to celebrate in the future.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
When it comes to, it's not alcohol.
Yeah, that's right.
Just
as far as you know,
it's Celsius.
Yes.
But I want people to know that I think Americans should call Celsius Fahrenheit. I think that would just make so much sense. I don't understand why it's called Celsius. But I wanted to ask you, it's super interesting to see that you've coached a lot of CEOs. And we talked about the pattern recognition. What are the key qualities that you think make a successful CEO at the growth stage of a company, at a public stage of a company, or at an early stage? And are all those qualities the same throughout? What have you found that you've been able to see based on the people you've worked with?
Yes. I mean, I can't talk about public companies. That's not my domain. I like to get them there and then.
Yeah, but do you think there's a difference between a public CEO and a startup CEO?
Yes, I think the things you have to deal with at a public level are very different. They're also very different at very early stage and then at mid stage. So I call it kind of a transition from hacking to scaling, right? And early on, early stage CEOs, your focus is on hacking, right? Doing everything you can possibly do to make shit work, to get stuff working, to get the first customer, to get the
do
product
what you can
out.
with what you have where you are.
Do what you can, right? And honestly, at that stage, the CEO is doing a lot of different things, right? Because they have to. Often they're the only one that really knows the product, or they really know how to sell, right? And they have to have their fingers in many, many things in the business to make sure stuff's working, right? And that's kind of juggling plates mindset, right? And I have to keep all the balls in the air, and I have to make sure everything's getting done, and it's my responsibility, and it's much more of a control mentality.
So you look for people that are detail oriented on the early stage side?
Detail oriented, but understand that they have to shift.
Okay.
Right. And again, we don't do very early stage investments, right? So we don't do pre-seed or early seed. Like we usually don't get involved until like bridge to A or A, and then we invest, all the way up to pre-IPO, right? We're multi-stage investors. But there's a reason we don't invest at early stage, because at early stage, there's not enough pattern recognition to know if someone can really build a business, right? Or if the product really is what they say it's going to be. And so we talk about ourselves as inflection point investors. So has the CEO and the company figured out something significant that's going to have massive impact on the growth of the business over time? And the other thing from an early stage perspective is you definitely have to have a different fund strategy and mentality, right? It's all about at-bats. Right, it's arbitrage. Like I need to be in as many early stage companies as I can. I need to have a specific follow-on strategy because only a couple of those are going to return my fund.
Sure.
Right, and we don't play that game. We have a very different structure. But going back to your question from a CEO perspective, I think the things that I look for in a CEO are pretty specific. So one of the big challenges that CEOs have is understanding that it's not their job to know all the answers. It's their job to find all the answers. And there's a big difference in that mentality, right?
Sure.
Oftentimes, as early stage CEO, maybe it's the first time they've been the CEO, they think that it's their job to know all the answers and to have everything under control and like, no, I got this, right? And that can be overwhelming, and it can really hamper people's
I
ability
really
to think,
appreciate when I'm on a call with a founder and they tell me, I don't know the answer, but I'll go find it.
Yeah, right. And that's,
or as opposed to like making something up on the fly that they think I want to hear. And we can see right through that. So I actually respect it way more because of course you're not going to know things.
Yeah, and that's a big indicator too. And there's a big difference.
Not everyone can be like Tyrion Lannister. I drink and I know things, right?
There's a big difference between someone making up an answer they think you want to hear, or having thought it through and saying, here's how I'm thinking about this, and having an answer.
Right.
Knowing that might not be the right answer.
Right.
But at least they've thought it through, right? And so one of the Davidisms that, when I'm talking to early
Davidisms?
Yeah, so there's a few like phrases and shit that I have that I call Davidisms. They're just like lines, right?
That's amazing.
And so
what can I call mine?
I'll let you think about it.
Okay.
But so one of the Davidisms that I talk about when I'm helping really early stage companies that are trying to raise money or capital and they haven't really figured shit out yet is one of the keys is you have to have all the answers. The trick is knowing that no one knows if they're right or not. Right. At early stage, like you have to have all the answers, meaning you have to have thought through everything about where your business might go, what the challenges be, what competitors are going to do, where the industry is going to go. But you have to couch it in a phrase of, here's how we're thinking about this right now. Right. And the worst thing to do when you're talking to a potential investor is not have an answer that they have.
Interesting.
Right? Because raising capital is about getting confidence.
Right.
Right. And when you're talking to someone across the table that's about to part with a bunch of money, hoping you're going to give them back a shitload more money, they have to have the confidence that you know what the hell you're doing.
Right.
And when you don't have an answer, you're like, oh, I haven't thought about that, or I'm not sure. That's a red flag from a confidence perspective. But what you don't want to do is just make shit up.
Yeah.
Right. So what you want to do is you want to think it through and say, hey, here, we've thought about that. Here's how we're thinking about it right now. And we think if this happens this way, this opens up this and allows us to do this.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at a 5-year projection, I'm not looking because it's like, a lot of early stage founders will have a 5-year projection.
Yeah.
And
in the red, year 1 and 2, break even year 3, profitable year 4, they all say the same damn thing. They're all wrong.
Exactly. And you know that they're going to be wrong 99% of the time, but it's like
no, 100%
you
of the
litmus
time,
test
they're gonna
how
be
they're
wrong.
thinking about
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And if it's like within that realm of like plausibility, then okay, they're not crazy.
Right. What's interesting about projections, and especially the 5-year projections for me, is not because I know they're wrong. But what I want to see is, do they understand how the business grows and scales? Right? Do they understand the unit economics? Do they understand the key levers they have to make happen to actually start driving growth and profitability? Not profitability, but growth and revenue, right? And it's really more about, have you laid out your business in a way that makes sense from a transactional unit economic perspective? I know your projections are wrong.
They're probably wrong because the assumptions that you think the market are going to have in a deep tech or a space industry are probably going to change.
Probably going to change, and everyone underestimates how hard it is to actually move forward.
Right. Well, that's why I say naivety is a really good tool. And so there's a thing that says first-time founders tend to either fail or be the biggest successes because of naivety. When it comes to knowing how hard it is to build a company, going into it, you're like, oh, it'll be easy. And then you realize it's hard, but you have the grit and determination to stick with it. And then when it says, go do it again, you're like, oh, I know what the fire feels like. I don't want to touch the fire. It's hot. But when you've never seen fire before, that's a pretty fire. And then you get burned.
Yeah, and I think the real important thing you said there is no one knows how hard it is until they actually do it.
Right.
And that sounds, like it's just a kind of a thing, but it's real, right? Being a CEO of a startup for the first time is literally one of the hardest, loneliest, most challenging things an individual can do.
Right.
And if you've never done it, you don't understand it. And even the people around you don't understand it, right? Because as a CEO, like, you can't always share what you're thinking about with your co-founder or with your employees or with your investors or even with your significant others sometimes, because they get scared.
Right.
So the pressure and the understanding that every single thing in your world depends on you and is overwhelming and incredibly, incredibly difficult. So it becomes a very, very lonely position. And everyone else on the outside looks at it like, oh, you're the CEO. Like, you do what you want. It's a great life, right? And they have no idea how difficult it is. And, I'll give you a personal example.
Love to hear it.
So when I was doing my third company,
what was that company doing?
It was a company called Pivot Desk. So office sharing marketplace, right? People that have leases want to offset some of the lease risk by sharing with other companies that needed it. This was back when WeWork was just starting, and sold that company in 2017. And so a year into building Pivot Desk, this is my third company, third time CEO, I was lucky enough to get invited to a CEO boot camp run by Reboot. I don't know, have you ever heard of Jerry Colonna?
No. Jerry Colonna?
Yeah, he's amazing. He's kind of called the CEO Whisperer. Amazing person. Lucky to call him a friend, even though I haven't spoken to him in way too long.
Jerry, if you're listening to this, give David a call.
Dude, he's awesome. And he was a CEO coach for a very long time. He's kind of known as a CEO Whisperer. And he realized he wasn't helping enough people, so he started a company called Reboot, where he was doing CEO boot camps. Right, bringing a bunch of CEOs in and really going deep on what it was to grow and build a company. And I was lucky enough to get invited to the first one he did, right? And so it was
in New York?
No, it was in Colorado.
Okay, cool.
And 10 CEOs for like I think it was 4-day long weekends thing. And so I showed up the first day, and 9 other CEOs, and at least 3 or 4 of those CEOs I knew. they're like, I didn't know them as friends. I'd never met them, but like, I knew who the fuck they were. Like, I knew their companies. Like, these were badass CEOs. These people knew what the fuck they were doing, right? They were building amazing companies. And I was like, what am I doing here?
You're like, who photoshopped me in here?
Seriously, like, I don't belong here. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm third company. I'm still trying to hack my way through it, right?
But does that ever change?
So that's the key question, right? So I'm in there. I'm like, why am I here? And we jump into the session, and by the afternoon, at least two of those CEOs who I knew were badass CEOs were like on the floor in fetal position, crying their eyes out because they never had anyone they could talk to about how scared they actually were every day.
Yeah.
Right. And how the fact that they didn't know at all what they were doing, they were just trying to figure it out, and they'd wake up scared shitless every morning that someone was going to figure out they didn't know what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah.
Right. And people that have never been in that position do not understand that mental state.
It's a tough mental state. I can relate. I think for me, the reason I started working in venture capital because I wanted to be that person that I needed when I was a founder to other people.
There you go. Yeah,
That's
it's
like
the right
that
motivation.
quote where it's like, be who you needed when you were younger. And one, I fell in love with space and deep tech. And then two, I was like, well, I've been through these experiences. I want to be there for others and I can help. I just might not be the right time for me to do it again. I'm still scarred.
Yes, very deeply scarred, deeply scarred. But that's the right mentality, right? And for me, look, everyone's different. Everyone has their own perspectives, right? I personally, I truly believe the best thing any of us can be is the best example we can be every day, because too many of us grow up without good examples, right? And especially in the startup VC world, right, man? There's some total fucking dickheads in the VC world. You know that, right?
Yes.
And on the CEO side too, right? Startup side too. And too often, those are the people that become examples for others. And,
Never meet your heroes.
Oh God, it's a scary thing. So I compliment you and commend you on your motivation. It's very much why Ari and I do Massive as well.
That's why we get along with you guys. I think we see eye to eye on a lot of things. Tell us some Davidisms.
Some Davidisms. So let's see. Another one consistent to what we're talking about is as the CEO, every single thing you do and say matters. And sounds like a simple statement, but when you really think about it, it's overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. It builds culture too.
So that's the next one. So it helps build culture, but the thing is, you don't realize as the CEO that everybody is watching every single thing you do and say. And every single thing you do and say affects your business, affects your co-founders, like when you walk into a meeting, when you don't walk into a meeting, who you talk to, who you don't talk to, who you listen to, who you support, the way you act. Mm-hmm. All of those things matter because everybody's watching. And what gets rewarded gets repeated, right? And if they see you doing things that you don't think are great, or you say, "Oh, that's not our culture," but if you do them, like you've totally
you can't
fucked your
tell
culture,
everyone
right?
like I want everyone in office every day, and you don't show up every day.
Right. So the extension of that is you are the culture, right? I don't care what you write on the board. I don't care what you put on the wall. I don't care what you write down as like, we work hard, we play, this is our culture. I don't give a shit. The only thing that really matters is what you do. So your actions as the CEO is the culture. And the extrapolation of that is of everything in your business, right? So we're all taught as CEO, our job is to control the business, right? There's literally nothing about your business you can actually control.
There's nothing.
Except the culture.
Yeah.
It's literally the only thing you can actually control. So why not optimize?
You can't control when people make decisions, when customers sign contracts. You can get them. You can get the probability of that happening higher to 100%.
You can manage to increase the probability, but you can't control it.
Exactly.
But you can control the culture.
That's 100%. So I think like when CEOs adopt a stoic mindset, it really helps them. And so culture is really, really important, and it's a soft skill. Yeah. How do you identify if a CEO is good at that?
A lot of conversations, and a lot of conversations with the whole team, understanding how they react to us, understanding that their thought process is insightful, like getting back to what we were saying before, they're not just blurting out answers, right? They're being thoughtful about the way they think through their interactions with us. The way a CEO treats a VC is really interesting, right? Because, there's a perceived power dynamic. Right. Even though you and I know that's really not the case, but there's a perceived power dynamic.
Sure.
And the way they treat the investor at various points of the conversation and where it isn't, especially if like things are getting hard and the round's getting tight and, relationships, those are really great indicators of how a person thinks through their leadership capabilities and skills.
It's like, okay, so I've had experiences where I've worked with a founder, and when they need something from me, I'm their best friend. And when they don't need something from me, good luck.
Yeah.
That's something that I avoid with it, like.
As you should. I completely agree. And it's one of the reasons, again, I mentioned, like, we don't do really early investments, but we meet a lot of the companies we end up investing in early.
You track it.
And we track it, and we interact with them, and we try and help, and we see how they're interacting, right? And we try and develop lines, not dots, right? And we try and understand, do these people really know how to interact, how to be a leader, how to build a business, right? What's the dynamic? And I'll tell you, some of the best investments we made are with companies that we didn't invest in the first round, right? And sometimes that was disappointing to them, which I understand.
But right? The way they reacted when you said no.
Yep. Yeah, and the way they maintain the relationship, like, it's a huge indicator.
Yeah,
do we
100%. It makes me want to work with you even more. And so
we will never stop you from doing that, Tarek.
No, I like when a founder.
Oh,
like,
you're talking about the founders.
Yeah,
yes. Yeah.
Well,
right.
no, but yeah, also with you guys. When it comes to building grit, determination, those soft skills to build culture and to be a better leader, what are some things that aspiring founders or early stage founders can do to build that internal grit to, like, no, I'm up against something really hard. It's gonna be lonely. How do you build that like resistance?
I don't know if it's resistance as much as passion, right? And there's a couple of things you need, and then we'll kind of go back to how you drive it, right? So you need a good network, right? As I mentioned before, like, being a CEO is one of the loneliest things you can do. Because sometimes it's really difficult and scary to talk to anybody else about what's going on. So you need a good network, you need good mentors, you need good people that are going to help you because they want you to succeed, not because they have equity in your business or they're investors. Like, I know it's super hard to, like, talk to your investors sometimes about stuff that's going on. But you need people that'll take a phone call from you at 7 o'clock on a Thursday because you're crawled up in fetal position on the floor in your bathroom because you have no idea you're going to make payroll on Friday. And they'll talk to you all night because they want to help,
right?
And they have experience, and they're not dangerous people to talk to, right? And you don't mind, so you need that. That's the first thing, right? And when you have those people that can say, no, you're doing the right thing.
It's okay if you fail.
Right? It's okay. Not only is it okay if you fail, but, like, I actually think you're doing the right thing. So just keep going, right? And let's save
having
the whole,
good mentors.
Yeah, having good mentors and people you can talk. Let's save the whole failure conversation too, because I think that's a really important one. But I think the other thing that is critical, which is really hard for a lot of founders, is having a vision that is unbelievably motivating, right? So when you talk about one of the things that's you have to – so I'll back up a second. As a CEO, I think you have 3 jobs and 3 jobs only in addition to everything else, right? And I say it that way on purpose because the first job of a CEO is to be able to communicate and create a vision in a way that everyone around them that matters understands where they're going, why it's awesome, why they should be part of it, right, and why it matters, right? And if you can really keep telling yourself that vision and believe, no, what I'm doing is important, that's one way to keep pulling yourself through the frustration.
Right.
But it's really important to believe that you're going to get there. Right. And so having and being able to communicate that vision is super important. The corollary to that is it has to be a super big vision, an exciting vision, but you also have to back it into, but here's what we need to do next to get there.
Right.
And it's hard to put those two together because a vision is really big and daunting. And it can be really scary, and the job itself is scary. So being able to pull it back to, but here's what we need to do next to get it there is a great way of understanding how to just, that's awesome. I'm going there, but I don't have to know how to get there yet.
Yep.
I just need to know how to get here. And if I can get here, I can understand how to get to the next phase, right? So I really believe businesses work in plateaus. It's never, there's never just this smooth up curve up to the right.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, it's all about what is the next thing where's the next place I have to get
the
my
way
business?
I look at it is, you're a CEO, you're a founder, you're holding up a torch in a dark night. The night is dark and full of terrors, for you, Game of Thrones quote. And you're holding up a torch so people can see the light.
Yeah.
And you know that you're going to get through this forest, and you know where the end point is. You know what your next step can be. You've thought about future steps, but you don't know what obstacles lie in that dark forest and then people can follow that lead.
Yep.
I think it's one foot in front of the other. A journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first step. That sort of thing, right? So you said 3 things. You said being able to communicate the vision concisely, clearly, and simply so that others can understand it and regurgitate it. Being able to drive that vision as well. Take the first step and know where you're going.
Yeah, know what's next.
Know what's next.
Yeah, right. So I totally agree with what you're saying. The way I refer to it is I think early stage, every company is about religion.
Religion.
And this is from an atheist. So, but I believe every
I
early stage.
I literally bought all the books in religion CJ saw in my library yesterday. Like, I have every single religion's book. I want to like read them all and see what are the common threads that tie them all together.
The ability to tell a story. And I mean, that's what it is, right? And when I say it's about religion, what I mean is you have to be able to get up on a table in a crowded room and tell a story about a better place in a way that people want to just take your hand and follow you.
We're going to Mars.
And believe, right, you're going to Mars, right? But that's it's a great example, right? Yeah. And people have to believe that you're going to get them to the better place.
You have to believe that it's possible.
It's possible, and you know how to get them there.
And the way you make people believe that it's possible is if they can picture it in their head. If you've described it in a way that I can see it, right?
Yeah.
I can see if we take this step, it's possible.
Absolutely. Like when you're early and you're just starting a company, like you don't have enough money to hire the people you want.
Mm-mm.
The people you want come work with you because they believe, right? And when you're sitting across the table from an early investor, like you don't have revenue, you don't have product yet. Like, why are they going to invest? They're going to invest because they believe.
Yeah.
And they believe what you're doing, and they believe you're going to get them there.
To me, the biggest indicator, a big indicator of early traction is the people that the founders have convinced to give up better paying jobs than a startup for equity. Those are your first investors. Your first employees are your first investors. Money you can get back. Time you can't yet.
Yeah.
Yet. I think we'll build a time.
Maybe.
Maybe. We don't know. But
we'll stick with type 1 and find out,
yeah. But when they invest their time and their energy, that's really valuable. It's more valuable than any dollar that can be given.
It's incredibly valuable. Not only that they invest their time and energy, but that they can communicate the vision also, and that's why they do it, right? We see early stage companies all the time where here's their team, and I'm like, oh, are they full time? I was like, well, no, they're part time. They have other jobs, but like if we raise money, they'll come work with us. And I'm like, that's not really going to sell me as an early investor because they're not all in. They don't really believe yet.
We saw a couple companies years back that had they were raising a pre-seed team of 16. When you dig into it, none of them are really full time. They're just like placeholders, and the founders would think that because I have all these names on this deck, I'm going to be convinced.
Yep, I agree. Who's with you? Who's with you? Who's following you? Who believes? Yeah. And do we believe those are good people too?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And do we respect them? I think it's Jeff Bezos. We can pull it up. He has like a matrix. Have you ever seen that? Of when you're hiring someone, it's do you admire them is the first question.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
And then it says if no, then don't hire. If yes, then there's another question. And if yes, there's another one. And if ultimately it gets to yes. But respect and admiration works for relationships, works for investing, works for hiring, working with others. When you stop admiring someone and looking up to them in one way, shape, or form, then
they shouldn't be there.
They shouldn't be there.
Yeah,
or you shouldn't be there.
Or you shouldn't be there, right? So I've never seen, that's a really good, I got to find that matrix because it sounds really valuable. I think.
We'll put it up on the screen.
Yeah. One of the ways I think about it is when you hire someone, you think to yourself, would I want to work for this person? Mm-hmm. Do you believe in them as a leader too? Right. And too often as a CEO, you think your job is to manage people. Right. And maybe super early it is. Just tell people what to do. But honestly, as the company grows, your job is not to manage people, it's to lead people. And it's to build a company full of leaders. Mm-hmm. Right. And each person in your company should understand how to be a leader. Mm-hmm. Right. And one of the things that I stressed really aggressively in my last company that was a little different for a lot of people is, every single person in my company matters. Mm-hmm. I don't care what level they're at or what their job is. Every job is critical.
Right.
Right. And everyone in that company should be thinking about how do we move the business forward?
Right.
And how do we build a better team? And how do we work better together? And that's
in that vein, like there's something that stuck with me. I don't know where I read it, but it was a quote that said, "Build your company as if you were to die tomorrow. The vision would still continue." So how do you do that where if a company only depends on one, two, or a group of individuals and they're all on a plane or they all quit, then the company dies, right? How do you build an organization where it's the sum of its parts, but it's not any one individual, any one core group of people.
Yeah.
And then everybody, because of that, feels included and feels part of that, and they'll work even harder and they'll add to the vision. For us, Type 1 began as something, and then it morphed into something else because everybody added their little flame to that ember, and then it grew into what it is today.
And it's hard to keep that going, right? And I think one of the biggest challenges that I had when I was CEO early is you have to understand that building a business is not about making friends. It's about building a business. And if you really want to build a great business, now I'm not saying you should be an asshole. You should never be an asshole. You should always be a good person.
I'm an asshole.
Yeah, sometimes. But the point is,
when have I ever been an asshole to you?
No, never to us.
Okay.
You have to understand.
I'm gonna take some notes. I'll show you.
We'll circle back on that.
We'll circle back on that one.
Understand that to build a business full of amazing people, you have to optimize for amazing people and get rid of non-amazing people. Mm-hmm. And that's really hard. Like getting rid of people and firing people is really hard. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do as a CEO, but it's critical.
And as a founder, you build an attachment to everyone you work with.
Yeah.
It's hard to be an asshole.
Yeah, I'll talk to a lot of early CEOs and they talk about their business as a family. I'm like, no, it's not a family, it's a business. Mm-hmm. And as your business grows, it's going to change.
Well, sometimes you have to cut family off.
Sometimes, yes. I know too well, but yes. But it's not about building it's about building a business. And to build an amazing business, sometimes that means firing people. Mm-hmm. And I shouldn't say sometimes, always it means firing people, which is unfortunate, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality is if you are not always raising the average in your company, the average is going down. And if you don't get rid of people that aren't true leaders or aren't really exceeding expectations or aren't helping you meet objectives, what's going to happen is they're going to pull the great people down.
Before you do that, though, you have to make sure that are we doing everything we can to empower this person to be their best self?
Absolutely.
If the answer is yes, we've done everything in our power to make sure this person has a platform to grow. Are we doing anything wrong? Always introspectively look internally.
That's your job as a CEO.
Exactly.
Is to support the best people, give them what they need to do amazing things. And if you're not doing that, you're not doing your job.
But if founders come in and say, "Oh, this person's not performing," it's like without asking that initial question, then that's I think the first step.
Yeah, and that's the challenge with that is a lot of times as CEOs we shift into a fix and move mentality. Instead of an understanding. Fix and move as opposed to understanding, right? And we generate a lot of our own value from how many things did I fix today? Right? What's wrong with that? Oh, just do this. What's wrong with that? Just do this. What's wrong with that? Just do that. Oh, I fixed all the things.
Sure.
I was good today.
Right.
I added a lot of value as a CEO. And that's the wrong mentality because what happens is you focus on quantity instead of quality, and you don't understand what's truly going on. And sometimes there's people in your company that are actually amazing people, but they're being blocked or they're being held up or they don't have what they need, right? And if you're just fixing moves like, oh, they're not hitting numbers, get rid of them, you're missing an amazing opportunity.
It's easy to blame something on someone else as opposed to first trying to take responsibility yourself.
Exactly.
When it comes to, obviously, as a founder or CEO, it's very hard to turn off. And
very hard or impossible?
It's impossible. But then that builds up over time and has detrimental effects.
Yeah.
How do you coach the folks you work with on the CEO coaching side, how to manage that?
Yes. So I don't think it's a question of turning off. I think it's a question of focusing on what matters at the right time. And here's what I mean by that. So
because it leads to burnout.
It absolutely leads to burnout. And there's several CEOs that I've worked with, a couple of female CEOs that had to leave for maternity leave, and they were scared shitless to leave their company to have a baby. I'm like, what are you talking about? You should, this is your life and your family. Yeah. Or CEOs that forget they should take vacation or they should leave. And I think one of the most powerful things a CEO can do is picture yourself gone. Think about what happens at your company if you are not there every day. Mm-hmm. What works, what doesn't, what might work better if you're not there every day, right? What will definitely break. And sometimes if you don't separate yourself from the business, you never find those things out.
Right.
Right. And you never find it's like, oh, that person is actually a lot better than I thought because I'm not all up in their shit all day long, right? And they're getting, and so it's really important to have these times where, again, it's not about doing less, but it's about focusing on different things. So take time, go on vacation, do what you have to do, and think about what's next for the business.
Right.
Think about the bigger things. Get your head out of the minutia, out of the day-to-day, because your company needs you to do that.
Right.
You have to be focusing not just in the business, but on the business.
Yeah, bigger picture.
And that's actually exciting and relaxing for a lot of people, and certainly helps with burnout. But it's a real mental jump to be able to take your brain out of the day-to-day and realize, like, okay, I am not critical to everything that's going on in this business right now. What I am critical to is, where's the business going?
Right.
And can I take time off, and can I see what happens in the business and observe it from a higher level and think about the next things for the business? Because that's your job. Your job is to always be thinking about what's next as a CEO. Like, keep people focused on their next job and the next plateau and the next place the business needs to get. But your brain has to be one ahead of that.
Sure.
And think through the next challenges. And you can't do that if you're deep in the minutia. So it's not really about what I found.
It's hard to call the plays if you're on the field.
You can't turn off.
You got to be up top, looking at the.
And everyone that doesn't understand, they'll say, "Oh, just let it go. Just go and just give yourself some time. Take some me time, right?" And like, that's
for
such
me,
bullshit.
it's really hard to have an extended period off because, like, I love the weekend, right? A Saturday where I'm like vegetating, not doing anything, maybe go to a workout class or go for a walk, and then but spend 2 days at home. After the second day, the third day or fourth day of not doing anything, like extended weekends, I get antsy.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to turn that off. Or
You shouldn't.
Or when I go on like a week-long vacation, I'm just like, I want to do something.
You shouldn't turn it off, because that's the energy and passion you need to build a business. But what you should do is direct it in the right ways. Right. So don't get antsy that you haven't gotten through all your email, or you haven't gotten these 2 documents done. Like, get antsy around, oh, are we really thinking about the strategy the right way? Or like, do we really think we're structuring this right? Like, think about the big things.
Yeah, big picture.
Big picture, because you need to, and you can't turn it off. And I don't care who you are. Like, if you're a real entrepreneur, like, there's no turning it off.
Yeah,
it's about focusing it the right way.
It's directing those energies into the right things. And obviously there could be negative ways to manifest that energy and positive ways to manifest that energy. Flipping to a more personal side, what are some things that you like to do on your free time? What gets you going? What gets you excited? That drives that initial passion? Because I think there's always some personal passions that lead to your professional passions as well.
Yeah, I mean, recently, a lot of my free time has been focused on family and kids, right? I have 2 kids.
Beautiful.
I mentioned to you, it was my daughter's 21st birthday. My son just graduated from university, so I'm at a really interesting stage in my life where my children are becoming adults, right? And
when do you become an adult? Because
I don't know, I'm still working on it.
You never figure it out.
You never figure it out.
Just pretend to know what you're doing.
Yeah, but making sure they're in the right place and thinking about the right things and being okay has been taking up a lot of my time recently. And my other passions are just a little different. I grew up racing cars, and I love.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. The things that I focus on.
What kind of cars do you race?
I haven't in a while, but I raced I raced Formula cars for a while, sedans for a while. Then I instructed race instructing for a while,
really cool.
And I do some shooting now and just range stuff.
Do you see the meme of the guy that was just like the turkey?
Yeah, they sent a hitman to the Olympics, right?
No,
yeah, he was awesome.
I want to meet that guy.
But yeah, like those things. The reason I've always gravitated towards those things. Getting back to our previous conversation, is like when you're doing those things, you can't think about other things.
Right.
And it's the only way I found of really letting my brain escape is doing things where you have to be completely focused on something else.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
I this year and last year, like last year was the first time I took a vacation in 10 years. I mean, I graduated college and then went into the workforce, startups, and never really had the time or the ability to. And then last year was the first time I sat down and I was like, okay, I can go.
How'd you do with that?
Abdo's here. It was great. It was 2 weeks. I went to New Zealand. I went to the Kingdom of Tonga, swam with humpback whales. And so I really fell in love with that. And I was when I was really able to turn off. But this year I started picking up a bunch of other hobbies.
What are you doing?
I picked up yoga, really into yoga. Like I can actually go in there for an hour and not think about anything else. And be in that mindfulness.
That's super important. I think the physical activity so I box.
I started boxing too.
Yeah, I've been boxing for almost 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
And I actually started a charity event in Boulder called Unite. It was originally called Founder Fights, and now it's Unite to Fight. And it's a big annual charity boxing event. We raise a whole bunch of money for charities, which is a lot of fun. But like that's the thing. Like when you're, first of all, you need that physical stuff, right?
It makes you operate so much better.
Absolutely. And, from boxing, I get to hit shit, which is fun too. Like, it's, get some of your
I
frustrations
box
out,
every
but,
Wednesdays and Fridays.
Nice.
I'm training, and I want to do a match at some point, like an exhibition match.
Boxing is really cool. I mean, the thing about it for me that
You want to fight me?
anytime.
All right.
I don't know. I think I'm in a bigger weight class than
It's
you
fine.
are, though.
I'll bulk. Or you can cut.
But the thing about boxing that was amazing to me, aside from the fact that it's just this great physical activity and you get to hit shit, right, which is important when you're struggling with
We should do a
right?
VC boxing.
Well, dude, I started Founder Fights. That was
okay,
the whole point.
that's the
But
whole
yeah,
thing.
happy to do that. Yeah. But the other thing about boxing, which was really interesting to me, is realizing that you can get hit, you can even get knocked down, but you still get up and finish.
Yeah.
Is super important, right? Like the stuff we do every day is scary, right? And we're scared of the failure, and we're scared of like, what if this happens? What if this happens, right? And I'm going to lose, or I'll have failed,
Right.
right? And no one's going to back me again, and no one will think about me, and I'll have to like crawl back to some stupid job somewhere, right? And the thing about boxing is you realize like, holy shit, like you can get hit, you can get hurt, you can get knocked down, but you can still get up and keep going. And
It's that
not
quote.
the end.
It's like get punched 8 times, fall down 8 times, get up 9.
Yep. And so that was really interesting to me. And kind of I'll bridge to like another David phrase too, just around that, because we talk about the fear of failure, right? And I think in our industry, especially from the VC side, like we're all focused on the binary outcome, right? That's our job,
Right.
right? And as a founder, it's so hammered into you. It's just all about the exit. It's all about the exit. It's all about the exit. And if you don't get that exit, you failed.
Right.
And the truth is, that's complete bullshit, right? And as VCs, we need to take that into account, and we do,
Yes.
right? Like we know not every company is going to succeed. But as a founder, whether or not your company succeeds does not equate to whether or not you have succeeded.
Right.
And that's a really difficult thing to peel apart, right?
It's identifying your self-identity away from the company.
Yeah.
And your job.
It's really and the industry pounds it into you.
Because when the company's gone,
what are you?
right.
Exactly.
And
And the industry pounds it into you. I mean, and I'll tell you. So personally, I believe that simply starting a company
is a big feat.
already makes you successful, right? That's something 99.9% of the people in the rest of the world never do.
Right.
And you learn so much by doing it. And you've given people jobs, and you've given people opportunities. You create value, right? Whether or not the company succeeds, you're already way ahead of where you were. But our industry doesn't talk about it like that, right? And I'll give you a personal example. So the first company I co-founded, the first startup I co-founded, I was not the CEO, I was co-founder. And we raised a shitload of money for that company. This is back in, back in 2006. I think over the course of the company, we raised a little over $60 million for the business. We did not return nearly that much.
Okay.
Not even close. We sold the company, checkbox, exit, right? Exited founder. Everyone's like, oh, dude, congrats, right? Getting all the emails, congrats, right? But it was a shit show, right? And we lost a lot of money for a lot of people. And I was clinically depressed, right? First time I'd ever co-founded a company. And
when I shut down my one of my startups, I was also like super depressed for like 6 months.
Clinically depressed, like couldn't get out of bed. I had moved my company to Boulder from New York. I was convinced I was going to have to move back to New York and get a fucking job, and like miserable, and like no one in Boulder would talk to me again. And 2 weeks after that happened, my lead investor called, and he said, "So what are you going to do next?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I failed." He's like, "No." It's like, "Dude, like companies fail all the time." It's like, we see this all the time. I said, "You did a good job. Like the way you led, the way you interacted with people, the way like you did everything you could. You did a great job. This was not, like you didn't screw this up. You did a really good job. What do you want to do next?"
Wow.
And it was such an emotional transition for me, realizing that, holy shit, like even though the company didn't succeed, it didn't necessarily mean I was a failure.
But that's a very American thing.
Could be.
It is.
Could be.
Because if you go to Europe, if you go to South America, failure is not encouraged. And it's actually, you become the stinky kid in class.
Yeah.
And people don't want to be around you. And so investors think that same way.
That's
I'm
unfortunate.
generalizing,
Yeah.
but I think also in the U.S. we have an abundance mentality, and most people outside of the U.S. have smaller markets. There's smaller outcomes, so failure is not looked as like go try and fail. It's like no, go try and succeed. Here it's like go try and fail. Like swing for the fences. You're gonna hit it 25% of the time, 20% of the time. There you bunt it.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, from my experiences, failure is not viewed the same way in the U.S. as it is viewed outside of the U.S.
That very much could be. I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I'll tell you, like as an investor, like I would much rather invest in a CEO that's had a couple of failures and understands what
it
works and
takes
what
a
doesn't.
lot to get back on the horse after failing. What's your favorite movie?
It's funny because I was just talking about this the other night because I pulled up a quote. I was with a bunch of people and I pulled a quote from the movie and no one knew the reference. I'm like, fuck, I'm old.
Give me the quote.
They just the quote was, so it was about ordering starch on starch. So like, I want French fries with my risotto.
Nope.
Movie's Big Night.
Never watched it.
If you've never seen Big Night, you have to watch Big Night.
Who's in it?
Stanley Tucci, Tony Shalhoub. Two brothers from Italy moved to New Jersey and opened a restaurant.
Okay.
And the evolution of that experience. And first of all, amazing acting.
Really?
It's if you are a foodie at all and you love cooking, which
You're
I
a foodie?
really do. Oh yeah, and you like cooking at all, like you will just die throughout the entire movie
Really?
because the culinary.
So don't be fasting or don't do anything.
It's kind of think of like The Bear only like 20 years ago, like
Okay.
right? And so the food scenes are amazing, but it's Stanley Tucci, Tony Shalhoub, like the lines, the acting are spectacular.
I'll have
The
to watch it.
storyline's amazing, and the last scene in the movie, which I think is like 10 minutes long. It's Stanley Tucci, Tony Shalhoub, and Mark Antony. I think it was like his first,
Like the
his
actor?
first act.
Like
yeah,
the
I think it was
singer?
like he's like he's like a young teenager in the movie. And
Mark Antony, like the singer.
Yeah,
He's like this tall.
yeah, and so it's just the three of them in the kitchen of the restaurant, and the whole scene is like 10 minutes long, and not a word is spoken, and it's one of the best scenes.
Just cooking.
Just recovering, like cooking, making breakfast. They're making an omelet.
For
Making
10
omelets
minutes.
for 10 minutes. And it's one of the most spectacular scenes you'll see in a movie.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, one of my favorite movies.
That's a good one. Well, David, I appreciate you for being here.
Dude, it's my pleasure.
We should do this again, and we need to do this boxing.
Yeah,
VC.
let's figure that out. We can totally do
It'd
that.
be so fun.
Yeah.
We do it by weight class, stage,
You got to do
sector.
weight class. You can't have, like,
class.
there's a reason there's weight classes in
It's a
boxing,
joke,
right?
yeah. But yeah, I'd look forward to that. I need some time to train still, but it could be fun.
Cool. And if you want to come to Boulder, I'll get you training at our gym. We'll have a good
Yeah,
time.
yeah. I got to swing by for the Lunar Outpost board meetings. So
Yeah, let me know. And shout out to the Corner Boxing Club where I go my boxing. And Carrie is awesome. And we'd love to have you there. And I can't wait to see you in Boulder, my friend.
cool. Thank you, man.
My pleasure.